Sister called Dad a loser, and went to live with Mom and Stepfather, but quickly returned after learning about my father's will, and said that I did not belong here, but Dad. I'll never forget the moment Ashley called Dad a loser. It wasn't just the word, it was the way she said it, like she really believed it. Like she had been holding it in for months and finally decided to throw it in his face. "You're a loser, Dad," she said, standing in the middle of the living room. "You've wasted your whole life, and I'm not going to end up like you." The room fell silent. I was sitting on the couch, halfway through scrolling my phone, and froze in mid-swipe. Dad, sitting in his usual chair by the window, just stared at her. For a second, I thought he was going to say something, defend himself, yell, anything. But he didn't. He just sat there, shoulders slumped, like someone had sucked the air out of him. Ashley didn't stop there. "Look at Roger," she said, her voice rising. "He's younger than you, but he's got his life together. A big house, a real job, vacations, all the things you'll never have." I wanted to say something, but my throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed sand. Dad wasn't perfect, sure. He was 57 and worked long hours driving a van just to pay the bills. He wasn't rich like Roger, but he wasn't a failure either. He'd raised us after Mom left, and he'd done the best he could. That had to count for something, didn't it? Ashley obviously didn't think so. She turned and stormed upstairs, muttering that she wasn't staying in this miserable house anymore. Dad didn't move. He just stared at the floor, as if looking at me or saying anything would completely break him. I stayed quiet too, not knowing what to do. When Ashley came back downstairs, she had a duffel bag in one hand and her cell phone in the other. "I'm moving in with Mom and Roger," she announced. "At least they know how to live. You should have tried harder, Dad. You could have been somebody." Then she walked out the door, the sound of the screens slamming behind her echoing through the house. Dad didn't try to stop her. He didn't say a word. I sat there for a long time, waiting for him to say something, but he didn't. Finally I asked, "Are you all right?" He shook his head slowly. "She'll regret this one day," he said quietly. "When she realizes what really matters." I wasn't so sure. Ashley had a way of always landing on her feet. She made her choices and never looked back. Roger's house had everything she wanted: space, luxury, and the lifestyle she felt she deserved. It never mattered to her that it wasn't built on anything real. But Dad? He stayed up late that night, sitting in his chair by the window in the dark. I think he thought I had gone to bed, but I hadn't. I stood in the hall and watched him sitting there. Maybe he was waiting for Ashley to return. Or maybe he was just trying to figure out what had gone so wrong. What we didn't know then was that Ashley wasn't done with us. Far from it. Ashley didn't call for weeks after she left. She did, however, post pictures. On Instagram, of course. Her and Mom lounging by the pool, champagne glasses in hand. A picture of Roger's Tesla with the caption, "Manifesting my future." And a picture of her new room in their house, twice the size of mine, with its own bathroom. She looked thrilled. I tried not to let it bother me, but it did. Meanwhile, Dad wasn't doing so well. He was quiet most of the time, and he looked tired, a different kind of tired than I'd seen before. He started coughing a lot and complaining about how much his back hurt after long shifts. I told him he should see a doctor, but he brushed it off, saying it was just from sitting too much. One night, out of the blue, he said, "I need to talk to you about something important." I was sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework and I looked up. He was holding a folder. "I've been thinking," he went on. "I'm not getting any younger. If something happens to me, I don't want you to have to worry about anything." "What do you mean, something happens?" I asked. He waved his hand like it wasn't a big deal. "Just being realistic. Anyway, I'm writing my will. I don't have much, but what I do have, I want it to go to you." I blinked, not sure how to answer. "Okay," I said slowly. "But what about Ashley?" He sighed and sat across from me. "Ashley has made her choice," he said. "She doesn't care about this family. She doesn't even call to check in. If she doesn't care about me now, why would she care when I'm gone? I didn't know what to say, but I didn't argue. I knew Ashley had burned her bridge with him, even if she didn't realize it yet. A week later, he told Mom about the will. I'm not sure why. Maybe he thought she had a right to know since they'd been married for so long. Maybe he thought she'd tell Ashley. Either way, it didn't take long for Ashley to find out. I came home from school one day to find her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. She had her duffel bag with her again, unzipped and spilling clothes all over the floor. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She smiled at me as if she hadn't left us a month ago. "Dad and I talked," she said. "I'm moving back in." That was news to me. I stared at her, trying to process what had just happened. "Why now?" I asked, not bothering to hide the suspicion in my voice. She shrugged. "I just realized I should be here for him, you know. We're family. And besides..." She paused, lowering her voice as if telling me a secret. "You know about the will, right?" There it was. She leaned forward, grinning. "I mean, it's just smart. Why shouldn't I get my share? I'm the oldest, after all. It's only fair." I didn't say anything. She thought I was on her side, but I wasn't. I wasn't supporting her little scheme, and I wasn't going to let her use Dad like that. Later that night, I told Dad everything she'd said. His face darkened. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was angry. "She'll stay 5 days tops," he said. "And then I'll make sure she knows exactly where she stands." What I didn't know was just how ugly those 5 days would be. From the moment Ashley moved back in, the house felt under siege. She didn't try to be subtle about her intentions. She acted as if her mere presence was a favor to Dad, as if she were a selfless daughter swooping in to help, even though everyone knew why she was really there. She spent the first day redecorating the guest room, her old room, before she decided Roger's mansion was better. She brought over new throw pillows, a vanity, and some expensive candles that she bragged were gifts from Mom. It was all for show. I didn't say anything, but I could see that Dad's patience was wearing thin. By the second day, she was playing the role of the perfect daughter. She cooked dinner well, heated up something from the deli, and made a big deal about setting the table. During the meal, she gushed about how she wanted us to reconnect as a family. "This is important to me," she said, smiling sweetly. "I want to be there for you, Dad. And for you too, of course," she added, looking at me. Dad didn't buy it for a second. He didn't even look at her while she spoke, just focused on his food as if she wasn't there. On the third day, Ashley began to test boundaries. She made references to family priorities and fairness. She casually mentioned that the oldest child usually inherits the most because it's tradition. "Don't you think that's true, Dad?" she asked during dinner. Dad put down his fork and finally looked at her. "What I think," he said, "is that you shouldn't count on something that isn't yours." The room fell silent. Ashley smiled awkwardly and didn't go any further, but I knew she was seething. By the fourth day, she was getting restless. She'd clearly expected her little charm offensive to work by now, but it wasn't. That's when the fighting started. It started with little comments, sarcastic jabs about how tight Dad was with money or how I was Dad's favorite. But then it escalated. She started snapping at him, accusing him of being unfair, of not appreciating her efforts, and even of punishing her for living with Mom. "I'm your daughter too," she yelled that night after dinner. "Why can't you treat me like one?" Dad got up from the table and looked at her, calm but icy. "You're not acting like my daughter," he said. "You act like someone who's just here to take. You don't care about me, and you never have. So don't pretend you're here out of love. We both know better." Ashley stormed upstairs, slamming the door so hard it shook the house. I stayed where I was, awkwardly picking at my food. "Are you okay?" I finally asked. Dad sighed. "She's leaving tomorrow," he said. "I'm done with her games." The next morning, Ashley came down, looking angry but determined. She grabbed her bag and muttered to herself, "This family doesn't appreciate anything." Before she walked out the door, she turned to Dad and snapped, "You're still a loser. Nothing's changed." Dad didn't even flinch. "Go back to your mother," he said calmly. "That's where you belong." And then she was gone. For a moment I felt relieved, but part of me wondered if it was really over. It wasn't. After Ashley left, the house felt quieter, but not in a good way. It was like the air had been sucked out of the place. Dad tried to move on, but I could tell the whole thing had affected him more than he wanted to admit. He spent most of his time at work or sitting in his chair by the window, staring out. I thought Ashley was gone for good this time. She hadn't called or texted, which wasn't surprising, but it still felt strange. Ashley was never the type to let things go quietly. Then, about a week later, the phone rang. It was Mom. I answered, and she wasted no time getting to the point. "I heard from Ashley," she said. "She's upset." "What's going on over there?" I almost laughed. "What's going on?" "She called Dad a loser again and left." "What else is new?" Mom sighed dramatically, as if that was somehow my problem. "You know, your father could try to understand her. She's under a lot of pressure." "Pressure?" Ashley's life at Rogers seemed more like a vacation than a hardship. But I didn't feel like arguing, so I just said, "If she's so upset, why doesn't she call him herself?" "She says she's tired of trying," Mom replied. "She doesn't think he'll ever forgive her." "Maybe because she's not sorry?" I snapped. Mom paused for a moment, then said, "Look, I just wanted to warn you. She's talking about the will." That stopped me cold. "What about it?" "She thinks your father is being unfair. She says it's her right to have a share, and she wants to talk to him about it again. She's determined." I hung up, feeling uneasy. Ashley had always been stubborn, but this felt different. It wasn't just about Dad or their relationship anymore, it was about what she thought she was entitled to. 2 days later, she showed up again. No warning this time. She just walked in as if she still lived there. "Miss me?" she asked, grinning as if nothing had happened. I didn't even try to hide my annoyance. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to Dad," she said, brushing past me. "And don't worry, I'm not staying." She found Dad in the living room, sitting in his chair with the TV on low. She didn't waste any time. "Dad, we need to talk about the will," she said. He looked up at her, his expression blank. "There's nothing to talk about," he said. "Of course there is," she said, sitting down across from him. "I am your eldest daughter. I deserve a share of whatever is left. It's not fair to cut me out completely." Dad didn't answer right away. He just stared at her, as if trying to decide if she was worth the energy at all. Finally he said, "Fair? Do you even know what that word means?" Ashley started to protest, but he cut her off. "You walked out on this family, Ashley. You walked out and called me a loser because I couldn't give you what Roger could. And now you want me to believe that you care about fairness? About me?" She opened her mouth to argue, but Dad wasn't finished. "You're not here because you love me. You're here because you think you can get something out of me. But I'm telling you right now, Ashley, you won't." The room fell silent. Ashley looked stunned for a moment, but then her expression hardened. "Fine," she said. "If that's the way you feel, don't expect me to come crawling back when you need me." "I won't," Dad said. She grabbed her bag and stormed out without another word. That night I asked Dad if he was okay. "I've made my decision," he said firmly. "Everything I have is going to you. Ashley made her decision a long time ago. Now she has to live with it." I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to think about the will, about losing Dad one day. I just hoped he'd be okay for a long time. But deep down, I knew Ashley wouldn't let it go. She never did. Life started to feel normal again after Ashley stormed out. Or at least as normal as it could feel in our house. I went back to school, Dad went back to work, and we didn't talk about Ashley or the will. It was like an unspoken agreement between us, The less we thought about it, the better. Then, about 2 weeks later, something completely unexpected happened. It was a Friday night, and I was upstairs in my room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard the doorbell ring. I didn't think much of it at first, probably just a package or maybe one of Dad's friends dropping by. But then I heard voices downstairs, and something about the sound made me stop. I couldn't make out what was being said, but I knew something was wrong. I crept halfway down the stairs and stopped. Dad was standing by the front door, and next to him was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, with a sharp suit and an even sharper expression. He had a briefcase in one hand and a business card in the other. "I'm here on behalf of Roger Williams," the man said, his voice soft but cold. I felt my stomach drop. Why would Roger, Mom's perfect, gym-owning husband, send someone to our house? Dad took the card, but didn't look at it. "What does he want?" he asked, his voice deep and measured. The man adjusted his tie, looking far too comfortable in our tiny, cluttered living room. "Mr. Williams thinks there's been a misunderstanding," he said. "He's concerned about your estate and how it's being handled. He feels it's in the best interest of your daughters to make sure everything is distributed fairly." I almost laughed out loud. Equitably? That was rich, coming from a guy who had more money than he could ever spend. Dad didn't laugh. He stared at the man for a long moment before finally saying, "You tell Roger he's got no say in what happens to my estate." The man didn't flinch. "Mr. Williams isn't trying to interfere. He just wants to make sure Ashley isn't unfairly excluded. She's your eldest, after all." Dad's jaw tightened. "Ashley doesn't care about me or this family," he said. "She's made that clear. And Roger doesn't get to send a lawyer to my house to tell me how to run my own business." The man's smile didn't falter, but there was something dangerous behind it. "I'm not an attorney, Mr. Carter," he said. "I'm an advisor. And my advice is to reconsider. It would be a shame if this became a legal matter." At that, I came the rest of the way down the stairs. "A legal issue?" I said as I entered the room. "Are you threatening him?" The man turned to me, his smile tightening. "Not at all," he said. "Just pointing out the potential complications of leaving a daughter out of the will." "Get out," Dad said suddenly, his voice like steel. "Now." The man hesitated a moment, then nodded. "Very well. But I hope you'll reconsider." He turned and walked out the door, leaving Dad standing there with the business card still in his hand. After he was gone, I asked, "What the hell was that all about?" Dad shook his head. "Roger thinks he can push me around," he said. "He's wrong." I didn't know what to think. Ashley was one thing, but now Roger was getting involved and hiring someone to come to our house. It was like they were trying to scare Dad into changing his mind. But Dad wasn't scared. If anything, he looked more determined than ever. "This isn't over," he said, almost to himself. He was right. It wasn't. After Roger's consultant showed up at our door, things escalated quickly. I thought Dad would let it go. He wasn't usually one to stir the pot, but this time something changed. He didn't say much to me that night, just told me to focus on school and let him handle it. The next morning he started calling. I had no idea who he was talking to, but it was clear he was serious. I picked up snippets of conversation, legal terms, names I didn't recognize, and phrases like, "Put an end to this nonsense." Dad was calm, but there was an edge to his voice I hadn't heard before. Later that week he called me into the living room and said, "It's done." "What's done?" I asked. "Roger, Ashley, everything," he said. "They won't bother us anymore." He explained that he'd gotten in touch with some of his old contacts, people he'd worked with when he had a more high-profile job. Apparently, Dad had a few cards up his sleeve that he hadn't bothered to use until now. He talked to a high-powered lawyer and drafted a letter to Roger and Mom, making it crystal clear that if they continued to interfere, he would take legal action for harassment. And let's just say, Dad added with a small grin, Roger doesn't want that kind of attention. Within days, the calls and texts stopped altogether. Ashley never showed up at our door again, and neither did any of Roger's goons. For the first time in months, it felt like we could breathe again. But Dad wasn't done. He was revising his will to make sure there would be no loopholes or surprises. Everything was locked up tight, with clear instructions that everything would go to me. He even wrote a letter to be included with the will, explaining exactly why Ashley wasn't included. She made her choice, he said, and now she has to live with it. Ashley, Mom, and Roger disappeared from our lives after that. We didn't hear from them, and we didn't reach out to them. It was like a clean break, and honestly, it was for the best. They had their perfect little lives and we had ours. Life moved on. Dad and I settled into a peaceful routine, and for the first time in a long time, things felt normal. Then, a little over a year ago, something unexpected happened, this time in a good way. I met Jake. We'd known each other in high school, but ran into each other again at a coffee shop. He was sweet, kind, and genuinely interested in me. When things got serious, I introduced him to Dad, half expecting him to be skeptical. But to my surprise, Dad liked him right away. A few months later, when Jake was looking for a new place to live, Dad suggested that he move in with us. Why not? He said. He's a good kid, and the house is big enough. Jake moved in, and it was the best decision we ever made. He's been such a big help not just to me, but to Dad. He helps around the house, runs errands, and even watches sports with Dad on Sundays. Dad seems happier now. He's still not in the best of health, but he's doing better. And for the first time in years, I feel like we're a real family again. As for Ashley, I have no idea what she's up to, and I don't want to know. She made her choice, and so did we. Life isn't perfect, but it's ours. And that's more than enough. The end.